I want to call to the stage Nadav Zafrir. If you don't know who this guy is, you should definitely know who this guy is. One of Israel's best. He's the co-founder and managing partner of Team 8. And together with him, we're going to have Admiral Michael S. Fortius. He is former director at the NSA and operating partner at Team 8. It's going to be amazing. The stage is absolutely yours. Batzlacha. Batzlacha.
All right. We're going to share this. So, hi everyone. Mike, let's get started. We're at the heels of our yearly CISO summit. We had about 130 CISOs join us for 5 days of cyber extravaganza. We spoke about everything. We spoke about AI, obviously. We spoke about a post-quantum world. We had a war simulation game. We spoke about OT, IoT convergence, all of the above. But what struck me was that the one thing that this year was top of mind for everybody is not technology and not even cyber per se, but rather the personal resilience. And we had breathing exercises, and we had Professor Tal Ben Shahar talk to us about the science of happiness and optimism. And what I found is that that's what sort of got everybody together. I mean, you know, where does that come from?
Yeah, I mean, to me, so we saw a group of 130 CISOs. It didn't matter what sector you were in, didn't matter what geography you worked in, it didn't matter how large your organization was. All were saying, look, we are living in a world where coming out of the pandemic, hard to believe, you know, a little bit in the past, hey, the pressure hasn't backed off. We still have an enemy, so to speak, a set of adversaries that are gaining in capability and gaining in aggressiveness. The expectations from our corporate leadership and the board is growing. The ability to try to find quality people is getting tougher. Our budgets are not on an upward endless build. Bottom line, hey, look, we are finding ourselves in a more and more stressful world that is sustaining that level of stress, and our organizations that have a lot of technical expertise, they got a lot of knowledge in many areas, but most of our organizations have very little knowledge and very few resources on how do I create and sustain both personal and professional resilience? How do I keep going in the midst of all this? That really interested in me, because as I was coming to Tel Aviv, that is not the way I thought it would resonate with this group of 130 CISOs.
Yeah, same here. You know, this topic, which surprised me that it became sort of the main topic at the CISO summit, at our village summit this year. But it sort of resonated because a few months earlier we had another summit and we brought founders in, and we called it the Founders Village. Same topic. Something is happening in the world that we live in. You know, we have a depolarized, balkanized world in front of us. We're probably in our lifetimes we've seen, you know, globalization and prosperity. Integrated supply chains, etc., and now we're seeing that separating. Last year when we were sitting here, the main topic that we were talking about is, you know, what do we see happening in the war in Ukraine? What's going to be the impact on cyber? What have we seen in cyber in the war in Ukraine, etc.? You know, we can't sit here.
Interesting last.
You know, we can talk about AI, but I think maybe let's talk about Yevgeny.
So. You know, first of all, it showed this, one of the other things we kept hearing from CISOs is, I need to understand this world around me because I have less and less control, and yet it is more and more impacting what my company is doing, some of the choices I have to make. And so Russia and Ukraine, remember a year ago we were 4 months into this conflict. We're now coming up on 18 months into this conflict, and in the last 3 days, we've seen this bizarre situation where the commander of the Wagner group basically says, look, he has been saying this for a year. Literally, we, the Wagner group, are the most effective fighting force on the battlefield for the Russians. We have done better than anyone else. And yet, we're the last when it comes to priority for ammunition. You're not supplying us, you're not supporting us. He had been saying this for about a year, and I think what you saw this weekend was, he finally said to himself, you know, I'm going to use this as an opportunity. This wasn't a coup. This wasn't an attempt to overthrow Putin. This was an individual who thought he had leverage with Putin and could convince Putin by aggressively moving into Russia, that he could convince Putin to get rid of the defense minister and to sack several of the generals in the Russian military who Prigozhin had been saying for a year are incompetent and are the reasons why this war isn't over. It's not the Ukrainians, it's because our own military leadership doesn't know how to fight and is doing a terrible job. As you look at the situation, look, it appears to have ended. I thought his objective was totally unrealistic, particularly when I'm thinking you are now seizing Russian territory. You moved into Rostov, you occupied the Southern Command's headquarters, you then start to move forward towards Moscow. So you're giving Putin, you're forcing him to deal with an impression that Putin no longer has control and that the military and the security services aren't fully aligned. I think that forced Putin to say, look, while I may not particularly totally disagree with your position about we should get rid of some people, if I have to choose between my credibility and this, it's my credibility that matters. We're not going to do what you want. 3 things would concern me about this situation. First, no Russian military or security service forces responded to this aggressively. They all sat there largely and watched. If I was Putin, that would scare the hell out of me. How could that happen? Secondly, if you watch the media, look at the reaction as the Wagner Group forces moved into Rostov, the first major city that they moved into. Citizens on the street cheering them. Why? What the citizens are saying was, you're the ones who are actually winning the war. You're the ones who are actually fighting and making the sacrifice, not the Russian military, not our leadership. We applaud you for your willingness to try to change that dynamic. That's the second thing that would, if I was Putin, I'd be really concerned. It's also one reason why I think he opted to come up with a compromise. Hey, go to Belarus, say this is over, I'll take care of you. He didn't want to get into a direct conflict because Prigozhin, as we've seen, has some measure of public support. The last point I would make, this to me means the war likelihood of continuing gets even higher because I don't see now how Putin can appear to back down. If anything, to me, he's got to double down because now he's got to be perceived as strong and fully in control and not responding to pressure from internal. I think this means he doubles down. But, so we talked about this robust kind of activity, and we are here. Look, there's a lot of business activity going on in Cyber Week. It is the nature of the dynamic here, where we bring together providers of capabilities, government individuals, small startups, large, big companies. As you're thinking about this ecosystem from an investment perspective, because this is the road you've gone into, unlike me, you're much better at this than I ever was. What do you say to entities that say, hey, what should I be thinking about if I'm going to invest in cybersecurity?
Yeah, I'll start by saying that I wouldn't switch places with Prigozhin right now.
I think he's going to have a heart attack or fall out of a window in the next 6 to 9 months.
I'm happy here in Tel Aviv for the time being. Look, so most of the time we speak about generative AI and how that's going to shape the world. I think we're just in the beginning of a new paradigm technological shift. To be honest, from where I sit, the dust hasn't settled. I think it's going to take a little bit of time. This is happening much faster than any other technological revolution we've seen so far. But give it a few days before you create an opinion about what's going to happen. And I think it's important to create an opinion about what's going to happen. From where I sit, this is how I see the world. It's going crazy, right? We have a World War I style war in Ukraine. And we have AI that's changing the world. It's all happening at the same time. So we're right at the edge of chaos. From an investment perspective, these are hard times because to topple this, we have an economic slowdown. But we must remain optimistic about the world that we live in. Everything has a pros and cons. The way we operate in order to get to that edge of chaos and try to transcend it and create some kind of order in it so that we can try to predict what's going to happen is the following. And that's why we created this company building platform and the idea of a repeatable process of navigating into a few years into the future. Let's say we go into 2025, 2027, 2030. Try to create a hypothesis about what that future is going to look like. Now, obviously, we're going to be wrong. So we're going to come back to today, and we're going to open it up to our village, and we're going to get feedback, and we're going to talk to the academics in the Tel Aviv University, and we're going to talk to the incumbents, and we're going to talk to folks like us that come out of intelligence and military, and we'll create, an opinion about that hypothesis. And now ideas will start to emerge. And if there's anything that I learned in 25 years of service, is that if you have an opinion about the future and you create a common vision about what you want that future to look like, how can you influence that future? You bring together the right people, you bring together the right investors, you expose them to the practitioners through the village, and you sprinkle some naivete or positive thinking on top of that. Good ideas will emerge. Now it's all about execution. So I'm still positive about the future. But with the minute that we have left, what are we going to be talking about next year?
Well, clearly the China dynamic and the challenge of that's not going away. That's a long-term challenge. It'll be interesting to see how this Russia situation plays out. We've got elections coming up in the United States. So a year from now, that will be 6 months, so less than 6 months from the election in the United States. When we meet again next year, I think we're going to be clearly focused on that. Iran and the dynamics here in the Middle East will remain very important, I think, and a lot of questions about, well, where is it going? What's the role of China in the region, Iran, et cetera? And then lastly, I think AI is interesting to me in part because I have never seen a technology move so quickly from the world of technology and developers to everyday individuals in society going, this looks interesting. I could use this. Hey, I'm going to go online and start to query this. You have to go back to the phone, the portable digital device, to the last time for me, I remember a technology that so quickly jumped from the theoretical, the academic, into everyday society. So what's next? It's going to be, quantum's coming up. I think we're going to be talking about AI is an opening into something broader, and it'll be, well, what does that broader look like?
So I'll leave you with two thoughts. Number one, AI is very dangerous. I can tell you this because my mother started using it. For real, I mean, she's using it to write WhatsApp.
She is a tough woman. If you've
She's a very tough woman, I can tell you that. Woman. Second thing I'll leave you with, when Yevgeny Prigozhin's statement came out, what went through my head is, how the hell do we know that this is actually Yevgeny Prigozhin saying this? Maybe somebody else is talking out of his mouth. I think that's going to be a major issue, especially as we go into an election year.
Yeah.
Admiral, thank you so much.
General, thank you. Thanks, everybody. You have a great day.